It is a windless night in a Montana meadow, and a foot of fresh snow hides everything that moves. By the end of this, you'll know how an owl finds a mouse it will never see, and why the answer sits in the shape of its skull. A great gray owl waits on a low branch while, below the snow, a vole takes 3 small steps through a tunnel in the dark. The owl drops, punches through the crust talons first, and comes up with the vole, an animal it never saw and could not have seen. It found the vole by sound alone. The faint footsteps under a foot of snow were enough. An owl can pin that sound in total darkness to within a degree or two, sharper than almost any animal ever measured. And how it does that is stranger still. This is a case that took decades to close. It began with a claim almost nobody believed, survived every attempt to explain it away, and ended with a discovery about hearing that reshaped a corner of neuroscience. The file opens not in the snow, but in a sealed room where a bird was asked to do something that should have been impossible. The first careful report came out of a laboratory, not a snowfield. In 1971, a young researcher named Roger Payne set up an experiment at Cornell University that sounds almost cruel in its simplicity. He built a room that was completely dark, not dim, but sealed against every stray photon, the kind of black in which your own hand is invisible. Into it he released a barn owl and a single mouse on a leaf-littered floor. Then he watched with equipment that could see in the infrared, waiting. The owl, blind by any human measure, launched from its perch and struck the mouse cleanly. Payne ran it again and again. The bird kept hitting its target in a room where seeing was physically impossible. He had proven something field observers had long suspected but could never pin down. This animal was not hunting with its eyes. And what happens by the end of this case is the part no one expects. The explanation would turn out to live inside the owl's skull, in an arrangement no other creature quite shares. But a single strange result is never enough. Before anyone would accept it, the obvious objections had to be raised and answered, one at a time. The skeptics went first. The obvious objection came first. The owl must be cheating. Perhaps a trace of light leaked into the room, and those enormous eyes, among the most light-sensitive of any bird, simply used it. Owl eyes can gather light in conditions a person would call pitch black, so the criticism had teeth. Others argued the bird smelled the mouse, or felt its body heat the way a pit viper reads warmth. Each explanation was reasonable. Each had to be tested and killed. Payne blacked out the room more completely, ruling out any stray light, and the strikes kept landing. He showed the owls would attack prey that left no usable scent trail. The heat idea failed too. A warm target that made no sound drew no attack at all. One by one, the comfortable explanations fell away, and the investigators were left staring at the only suspect that fit: sound. But sound alone seemed impossible. A mouse's footstep is almost nothing, a whisper of a whisper. To pinpoint it in 3 dimensions, in the dark, to within the width of a paw, an owl would need a hearing system unlike anything in the textbooks of the day. That is exactly what they went looking for, and exactly what the next test forced into the open. An owl in a pitch-dark room strikes a mouse dead center, with nothing to see by. Roger Payne needed to prove it was really sound doing the work, so he ran a test that left no room for doubt. He tied a dry leaf to the mouse's tail, then, in the dark, pulled the mouse across the floor. The owl struck the leaf, the thing making the rustle, not the mouse itself. That was the proof that could not be argued away. The bird was aiming at a sound, not a body. Take the sound away and the owl misses. Move the sound and the owl follows it. The strike was tracking noise, and only noise. Later measurements put hard numbers on that accuracy. In controlled tests, barn owls located a sound source to within about 1 degree in both the horizontal and the vertical, roughly the precision of a person pointing at a single star. Under snow, where a great gray owl cannot see even a shadow, that same acoustic aim is the entire hunt. The owl builds a picture of the world out of tiny differences in when and how loudly a sound reaches each ear. And the reason it can do that comes down to a defect, one the whole animal was built around. Payne's behavioral proof was one thing. A decade later, a different kind of scientist confirmed it from the inside. At the California Institute of Technology, Masakazu Kanishi and his student Eric Knudsen went looking for where, physically, the owl's sense of a sound's location lived. Using fine electrodes, they recorded single nerve cells in the owl's midbrain while playing sounds from different positions around it. What they found was startling in its neatness. The cells were arranged in an orderly grid, a literal map of auditory space. One cluster of neurons fired only for a sound high and to the left. A neighboring cluster fired only for a sound low and to the right. Move the sound, and a different point on the map lit up. No one had ever watched a brain draw a chart of space out of pure sound before. It was independent, physical confirmation of what Payne's darkroom had implied. The owl really does compute a precise location, and it dedicates specialized tissue to doing it. Two ears feed the map. The timing difference between them fixes the horizontal angle. The loudness difference fixes the vertical. And that vertical trick depends on something almost no one ever notices about the shape of an owl's head. An owl hears not just left or right, but up or down. It locates a sound in full 3 dimensions. Most animals, us included, are good at the horizontal and poor at the vertical. The owl closed that gap with a strange piece of anatomy. Its 2 ear openings are set at different heights, one higher than the other, hidden under the feathers. A sound from above reaches the higher ear a hair sooner and louder. A sound from below favors the lower ear. The brain reads that up-down imbalance the same way it reads the left-right timing, and out of the 2 together it fixes an exact point in space. That is why a great gray owl can aim straight down through snow it cannot see through. It has already placed the vole in 3 dimensions before it leaves the branch. The facial disc, that flat ring of stiff feathers, works like a pair of adjustable satellite dishes, funneling faint sounds toward each ear. The field now broadly agrees on the whole chain. Dish, mismatched ears, timing and loudness cues, and a neural map that turns all of it into a target. What began as one man's unbelievable claim in a dark room is, today, quietly settled science. And yet the owl still does something the equations do not fully capture. There is still a gap in the file. In the wild, a great gray owl will strike prey buried under snow deep enough to swallow the bird's own head, through a crust that muffles and bends a sound on its way up. In the lab, the targets are clean, close, and out in the open air. No one has fully explained how the owl corrects for all the ways a foot of snow distorts a tiny footstep and still lands within an inch of it. The math says it should be harder than it is. The owl does it anyway, every winter night, and files no report of its own.